So I'm going to show you Gulf Shores, Alabama. They have business licensing, and they call it, they just call it taxes. They were transient occupancy tax. So they do taxes for different things as well as lodging. So I'll kind of show you theirs. So on the portal, let's just apply for a license. So I'm going to go into apply for a license, and then I can either register if I'm new to the portal or log in. If I already have an account, I'll go ahead and register. I'm on the test site, so I don't think I have an account here. So let's say that I'm, this list is customizable, so you can put whatever you want in there. I'll select taxpayer. I think that's what they use. And I'll put my email address. And when they register, it validates their email address. And if it's already in the system, it'll say, hey, you're already in our system, and give them the opportunity to recover or reset their password. This is important because when we migrate your data, a lot of them will already be in the system, and we don't want them to register again because then there won't be a connection between their license. So this is how we wrap them up so that we can connect new users with their older data.
Okay.
Put my password in here again, or my email again, and I'll just make up a name. And you can determine what fields you want to be required. So in this example, they want first name, last name, home address, and mailing address for the business. And I'll just put some information in here.
And Julie, from the admin side, is there a way to consolidate accounts? So say I signed up, say you converted my information or brought it over from the old system and I used one email, but when I sign up, I use a different email, but all the information itself is the same. Could we consolidate those manually on our end?
Yeah, you can consolidate them manually. There's not an automated way to do that.
Right.
Just because it's so hard to match them up. You have to kind of look at them. When we migrate data, we try, a lot of times the data will have lots of duplicates. So if we find that, then we try to scrub it as best we can. Like, can we match on phone number? Can we match on email? Things like that, to try to eliminate duplicates as much as possible, because it's one of those issues that if you bring them in duplicated, it just, you're starting out with messy data. So we try to clean it up as much as we can. So let's say I'm a hotel. I'm just going to be, I don't know, Beachside Hotel. And I'll make up an address. And a phone number. We'll do a work phone. And I'll make a password. And submit. So now that I've registered, I can go ahead and apply for my license. All right. So this is, I'm going to show you business licenses and the TOTs, and I'm going to kind of jump back and forth between CitizenServe and the online portal. If you see this logo up here, the City of Gulf Shores, that's their portal that their business owners and applicants use. If you see the CitizenServe logo, that means I'm in CitizenServe, which is the internal application that you all would use. Okay. So let's go to the portal, and we'll start by applying for a new license. So I'm going to go to apply for a license and select my license type. This list is customizable, whatever your different license types are. So I'll select business license, and once I select that, I see a list of the subtypes. And again, this list will be whatever you want the list to be. So I'm going to select accommodation and food services. And let's say it's Beachside Hotel is the name of our hotel. And then we can ask this question. This is optional. You can enable this function or not, to see, ask the applicant if it's part of a new or existing business location. So what that will let you do is, if let's say they need they need multiple licenses. They need a separate license for alcohol and a separate license for their restaurant, another license for their hotel. You can let them say it's for an existing location, and it groups them together, and they don't have to enter a lot of the same information again. I'll say it's for a new location. And we'll enter 3817 Gulf Shores Parkway. And I'll hit find address. This searches the parcel database to see if we can find the address in the city. And if it's found, it'll be listed and they can select it. If there's only one, it just pulls it in. But because this one has multiple units, it's listing all of them. So I'll select that one. And that pulls in the address, the parcel number, and the owner's name. It also pulls in any other parcel-related information, but on the portal, the applicant can only see this basic information. And from this point down, these are what we call custom fields. They're basically the fields that we see on your paper applications that we set up in the system. You can add them, you can remove them, you can change the order, you can have different types of fields. There's lots of options in here. So here's an example of a drop-down field. And you can set these up so that once you select a value, it shows more information based on the value you selected. So if I select corporation as our organization type, then I see fields for the date of incorporation and the state and the county. So if I select partnership, I don't see those fields. So you can customize this based on values that the user enters in the application. You can ask additional questions. I'll put in a federal tax ID. The little red line means it's required, and you can determine which fields you want to be required on the applications. I'll select a date here. You can also add what we call help text, and these are these blue question marks, and that just lets you put a little bit of additional information for each of the fields. So that's an optional thing you can add. I'm going to just come in, let's put in a business description. And they're asking questions about, is it a rental unit located physically? I'll say, no, it's not. And I just want to fill in the required codes. They have one NAICS code, and I'll select this one. You can also put links to outside information. So the NAICS code is one of those things that nobody really knows off the top of their head. And so if you wanted to put a link to it, you can. If I click here, it's just going to open a new tab and show me all the different codes. So you can do that with different types of things. Like here they have a link to tell them more information about how to determine their gross receipts. Oh, I'll just say my gross receipts are $250,000, or I expect them to be. And let's say I'm also wanting a liquor license. I'll put that in there. And then we come down to the bottom, and we're going to agree to terms and conditions. You can change the text here. So whatever your attorneys say you should put in there, we can put in there. They can save it for later. So if they didn't finish filling out the whole form, they can save it for later and come back to it, or they can click submit to submit the application. Once they submit the application, it can collect fees. So if you want to collect all the fees up front, you can do it at this point in time. If you just want to collect application fees up front, you can configure the system to do that. If you don't want to collect any fees up front, you can also configure it to do that and collect those fees later. All right, so I'm going to jump over to CitizenServe and go to the home page, and we'll take a look at that review routing. So the way theirs is set up, it's going to come into, Layla does the initial review, so it's going to show up on her task list, and it says it's a new business license submitted. So I'll click that, and just quickly, I'm going to show you what the reviews are. So here's their review route. It's going to come in as submitted, and it goes to revenue as a department name that processes these. And then it's going to go to planning and zoning and fire. And then when everybody's done, it'll go back to revenue to say that it's complete. And if you look at these dates, you can tell who's got it on the list. So if it has a due date, it means it's been assigned to that person or department. If it has a completion date, it means they finished it. So when I look at this, I can see that right now it's just sitting on revenue's list. And once revenue does their piece, then it's going to go off to the other two departments. So let's take a look at what revenue would do, and then we'll look at what planning and zoning and fire would do. And you can customize that list. It can be as many departments as you want. You can have things become active at different times. That's all configurable. So typically what they would do during their review is take a look at the application. So we're going to click the ... icon. Whenever you see the ... it means more information. So if I click it, it's going to open up a new tab so that I can look at this application and just see basically what they filled in. You can create an inspection checklist, or not an inspection, a review checklist. And to access that, you click the book icon here. And so this is kind of a brief one. Oh, they need to give us a valid federal ID. You know, maybe they didn't provide good enough gross receipts estimations. This list can be, whatever you have, whatever checklist you have that you're looking for. And you can select any of the items that are missing and hit save. If you wanted to add additional information to one, you can, just start typing in here to add more info. If you wanted, there was something missing that wasn't in your checklist, you could come in and add something here.
And Julie, so when it goes to planning or fire or whoever, and they say, yeah, okay, we need to do an inspection, does it like automatically add a fire inspection fee to the shopping basket or whatever, so that at the end of the process, we see the list of fees from the various departments?
It can either automatically do it based on actions that they take, or they can manually add it if you want them to have the control, or I want to add it or I don't. Or you can just say, okay, if this kind of action happens, then add the fee.
I think it's probably pretty common. As it goes from department to department, they say, okay, for my department, we'll have to go out and do a level 2 inspection, and that costs $138, and add it to the documents that the person has to now manually carry around, I think. I don't know. Where they need to get stuff done, or maybe we ship it from paperwork from one department to another, and then they initiate what they need to do, like an inspection.
We collect up front the building inspection fees.
Okay.
Fire department are doing their own thing. We used to collect fire and building at the business level, business license level, and then, but it would, they come into our desk, they fill out the application, we put the fees down, but then we manually send them over, or we send them over, somebody that walks in anyway. We send them over to building or planning for sign-off, and then it comes back to us, and then they pay their fees.
Okay.
If it comes to the mail, they've paid their fees, and then we forward the paperwork over to building and planning for sign-off.
Yeah, perfect sense. So thinking about an automated system, as soon as they trigger, I'm going to open this type of business.
It already knows kind of what fees are going to be required.
Oh, that type of business requires this, and this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have specific rules about which ones need inspections, so if it's not really a user or reviewer determination, we can automatically have the inspection there saying we need to schedule it. So if you say, all restaurants need an inspection, then we can automatically schedule that.
On the fire department side, on the planning department side, do they have like an ongoing list of their to-do list, and it naggingly sits in front of them until they actually do something?
Yes, they do.
How does that fire dude get tickled through reminders that, hey, you've got 100 of these in your inbox?
It shows up when they first log in. If I go back to the home page, it's going to be right here on their task list, so they're going to see it right there.
And those will have the same due dates. The due dates turn red as well as they start to approach and stuff like that too.
Right.
So.
And you can have a way to look at that. So if you want to say, I think I have a metric in here. Let me look at a metric. Pending license reviews. Let's try this one.
An automated way of sending daily reminders. You have actionable items in your folder, your system.
There's not a daily email reminder that they still have things to do. You could set up a process that you'd say, let's say we want to, everybody who's approaching their due date, we want to send out an email to them. So you could set up an email process. We found that if you send out emails every day saying you have things to do, people just ignore the email. So it's better to be like, okay, you get one a month or one a week, and hopefully they'll read that one. It's kind of the, people aren't clearing.
I like that. Either by due date, or maybe set it for if a week has passed.
Right. I can do that.
Something rules-based, right?
Yeah, based on dates typically is what most people do. And here's an example. The metrics are kind of like a mini report. It's sort of a dashboard preview, and you can add as many metrics as you want. And this is a good one because it talks about, you know, our pending license review. So it's saying we've got 142 applications out there that we're waiting for other departments to finish their review on. And then you can see each department, how many each has. So building's got a ton. You could, you know, send building an email, hey, you have 116, what's going on over there? And you can drill down too. So if I say, oh, let me see the 8 that planning and zoning has, you can click the link to view those 8. Oh, I must not have access to view planning and zoning. There we go. Here's the 3 for revenue. So you can, and they turn red if they're overdue. So it kind of gives you kind of a bigger picture of what's still out there and what are we waiting on. So you don't have to see it every day, but you don't forget about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, so let's do this review, and let's say they were missing some information. And the departments basically do a very similar process. They have a checklist. I'm going to check off this and that. So let's say they're missing these 2 items. I'm just going to save that. That goes down in my comment here. And then I'm going to select a status of resubmittal required, which just means we're not going to push this onto the different departments until you give us, you know, the information that we need. And I'll send an email. I'm going to send the email manually. You can have it set up to automatically go out. So I will select the incomplete application notice, and I'll click the ... to select our recipient. And normally I would just hit send, but I'll hit preview so you can see the email. Basically, it's just a standard template. You can have as many templates as you want, and it just pulled in those items that I checked off. So then the applicant gets this email, and they can go in, send the remaining information in, and then you can complete your portion of the review. Let's hit send. And let's say we got it. We're done with our part. I'm just going to approve it with today's date and save it. So now when I look at our review tasks, planning and zoning and fire now both have tasks. So it's been sent to them. They got an email when it was now that it's been assigned to them, and then it's going to show up on their list. So they'll do their review in a similar manner. They're going to log in. They'll have a checklist. They might send an email with comments, or they may approve it. Does that part make sense?
Yes.
All right, cool. Once they're both done, then it'll come back to revenue and say the review is complete so that they can issue the license. So let's take a look at the license and how we would issue it. It's calculated our fees for us. So if I scroll down to the bottom, here's the fees. If they haven't already paid, what most municipalities do is they'll approve it but not issue it, and once it gets approved, it sends them an email that says you've been approved, go online and pay your remaining fees of X dollars, and then that will issue it.
Normally we have them pay up front before it's routed. Are these?
They can pay, you can have them pay the full amount when they apply.
And then right here, if say that we came into something that required a little bit of an extra fee, there would be an additional cost that they would be able to pay before they issued it too. But we could have all of the fees paid up front.
Yes. So let's say, I'm just going to log a manual payment. Let's say they mailed in a check. I'm just going to log a manual payment. We'll say it was a check and it was $695. So now once I put this in, it shows that they have a zero balance due. They've paid everything. But let's say during your review, you determine that they meant to put $500,000 here. So I'll change that. Their fees, I believe, are based on gross receipts. So right now it's $545. Let's hit the calculator to readjust the fees. And that changed our balance due. So now it showed, okay, they already paid $695, but since we had updated the amount or we added additional fees, now they owe $330. So they'd have to go and pay that before we would issue it. So if other departments or anything comes up that you need to charge additional fees, you can add those at any point in time. So let's say we're ready to issue this. I'm going to change the status to active and generate the license. So to do that, I'm going to hit generate document. And I'll select the business license certificate and hit generate document. So this is a warning, and you can have different types of warning. This is warning me because I didn't complete those other 2 tasks. I went ahead and tried to prove it without doing that. So it's just warning me saying, hey, are you sure you want to do this? You've got some tasks that aren't done. And I can either say, no, I don't want to do it, or I can override it and say yes. You can also set those warnings up so that the user can't say, it just stops them dead in their tracks. So if you say, we never want to issue a license if they owe money, we make it a stop so they're not allowed to issue the license. So here's an example of the Gulf Shores license. It just is, got the year and all this basic information about the license. They could save it and email it to them, or physically mail it to them, or have them come in and pick it up. You can kind of do whatever you want with that. I'll click Save, and that saves the document to the Documents tab. So if you ever wanted to come in and look at it again, you can just click here to see the license, or if it needs to be reprinted or something. So that's how they apply online, and then how we issue the license. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. So while we're on this license, after we issued it, we would want to set up their occupancy tax account. So to do that, I'm just going to hit Add License to the existing file, and Gulf Shore just calls it tax. And they have lots of different types. I'll select lodging. If you just do the TOT, you would just have lodging in there. And then I'm going to say, well, they're effective today, so their tax reports are due starting this month. If they go out of business or something, then we'll put an ending date in there. And active. So now when I look at the licenses tab, they have 2 licenses. They have the business license, and then they have the tax. You could call that TOT. The TAX is just what they do. The letters are configurable. You can name it whatever you want. So if they mail in their tax report, I'll just add a tax report to this one so we can see how that works. Go over here on the side and select Add Tax Report. It defaults the date that's received. You can have a status here if you want. That's customizable. So let's say they're reporting for June. And all of these are customizable fields. So we look at your tax reports and basically set it up like how the way your reports look today. So Gulf Shores has an interesting thing. They have police jurisdictions where if your business resides in a police jurisdiction, I think you get a discounted fee. I'll just add the same amount and we'll see. I don't remember if it's discounted or an increased fee. It's one of the 2. And let's put in a couple of deductions. Let's say $500. And then let's say they paid early, I could give them an early discount. So I'm just going to hit the calculate, so that will calculate all our fees. So theirs is based on, it's cheaper in a police jurisdiction. So theirs are based on a percentage, I forget what the flat fee is, and then they provide a discount if they file early. If they didn't file early and they filed late, I could check those buttons and hit the calculator, and then it takes the discount away and it adds penalty fees. And if I want to add interest, I can also do that. Now Gulf Shores, they get 90% of their fees from the state. The state has something set up where when people go to pay their state taxes online, they can also pay their local tax. Do you guys have anything like that?
No.
No. Okay. It just makes it easier for the taxpayer. They just go to one place to pay, and then we import those files. So that's how the tax reports work. If I look here under tax reports, we can just see they have one. So every tax report they submit, they'll all be listed here under the report. So you'll see over time how many there are, if some are unpaid. If they didn't submit a report, there's ways that we can track that as well. So that's the taxing side. Does that make sense?
It does.
Cool.
I have a question. I understand these can all be set up differently, but on that report that you did there, does it show, what I'm looking at now is a summary item. So the details for the gross receipts and the exemptions and deductions, would you be able to see those in a report issue? Like, yeah. We've got 1,200 returns plus a month, and so we pull all kinds of reports. based, you know, showing the tax due, but then we also need information regarding, you know, a total gross collected, different information.
Exemptions. You can do reports on pretty much anything in the system, and Gulf Shores has a ton of reports. Let's look at some of their tax reports.
And while Julie's looking for that, so with CitizenServe, there's a report writer. You guys create your own reports. We're also, with CitizenServe, we're always going to make any change to the software that you want to make. If you want to change your fees or your workflow routes, any report that you want to have done, unlimited training, all that's included in your subscription. So you can ask us to do a report, and something like a report we would get done that day. 85% of the things we're asked to do by our customers each day are done that very same day.
So here's a couple examples. This is a delinquency notice list. So this is what it lets you do is it says, find everybody who didn't submit a report. So let's say, let's do it for February. Find everyone who didn't submit anything or who still owes money. Maybe they did submit a report, but they didn't send in a full payment. So this is just a list of everyone who still owes money for a certain tax period. So that's an example of one report. Let's look at, off the top of my head, I don't know what all of their reports are like, but let's look at tax subtype. Let's just do a date range. That looks good. I don't know what this is going to have in it.
Is this still for the city in Alabama?
Yeah, this is for Gulf Shores, Alabama. That's why I don't know all of their reports, just because they build them over time and they add them. So this is just a summary report. It's breaking down. These are all the different types of tax they collect and what they collected in that 1 month period. Let's see if there's another good one. I don't know if they have any with the, let's look at that one as a detail, actually. Maybe that would have more information. Which one did I do? Daily deposits? I don't know. Let's look at this one. Oh, this is just to run. They run reports on like, oh, all the payments that came in for this date, show me the details. So here's one that's broken out by, here's the payment amount, the license fee, the penalty, the interest, rental, and total. You could easily add a column here to say, show me the deductions and show me the gross revenue. So all the reports are pretty custom. There's a lot of standard reports that come with the system, but you know, they're okay. What people really need is what they really need. So if you have reports you already use, things that you're already reporting, just give us that, we'll set them up. But mostly what happens is over time, we just add more and more reports based on, you know, what you need in that moment. You also have, let's look at they just have so many reports. They have tons and tons there's a lot of folders. Renewals, let's see. When your business licenses expire at the end of the year, you send out renewal notices, and those are set up in the system as just a batch report. So I'll pull this up. Test Run lets me look at it without actually saving them or generating them, but you just run it, and it might take a while. I don't know how many they have in there. And it's basically one page for each person, and you can make these look however you want. So this is like, they break it down. Oh, they show on this table. They still have a lot of people who mail in checks, so they wanted to show this table so that they know, okay, here's the amount. When people do math, they don't always do it right. So they printed the table. But you can go online and make these payments as well.
And we don't do gross receipts, or we have very few items that are gross receipts. We're all specifically by the type of code, whether you're a contractor and a bunch of different items from, you know, or your massages, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's how.
All the
Individuals, yeah.
Yeah. That's how, it's probably a split. Like some people do it on gross receipts, some people do it on number of employees, and then the other group does it on, you know, each license type has a separate fee code, and that's what it is. So you can do it either way. So that is an overview of the licensing and tax portions. Any other questions? Anything you guys looking for I didn't show you?
Well, I assume it's easy to add other modules with, just basically duplicating for example, we have a growing cannabis tax, and
Yeah.
we have
You
that
just set up a new license type or a new tax type.
Yeah, so we're going, the very basic cannabis tax is just very simple, straightforward for a handful of vendors, and now it's being opened up to a whole number of permittees, and they're going to pay based upon sales of product. They're going to pay based upon cultivation. And it gets kind of pretty involved pretty fast.
Yeah, you can do, they have lots of different, like Gulf Shores has tons of types. Here's one that's consumer tax usage. So they, different rates for gross receipts, for general consumer use, separate rate for automobiles, separate rate for machines. So there's lots of different kinds of taxes that you can set up. They actually have, if I look at their tax type, let's go to, no, not a license.
While you're pulling that up, one of our issues has to deal with underreporting, delinquencies. We end up creating payment plans.
Yep.
It gets pretty far away from this is how much you owe and they pay it,
Right. You can have, I think they've got invoices. So they just do preliminary assessments, just different types of invoices based on different situations. So you could always, if you set up a payment plan, we just need a way to insert that plan, and then you can run invoices off of it.
I automatically calculate penalty and interest on unpaid amounts due.
You can. So the way the system works, here's tobacco. That's kind of a different one. Tobacco's interesting because they ask them, well, how many cartons did you sell? So the rate is based on the number sold rather than the value of the number sold. But you can do, the system, what it does is it automatically, when we import those taxes, it will calculate and add, let me find one that's got tax, all the tax and interest. So they have two types of fines. You could file but not pay, so that's one penalty. If you don't file, that's another penalty. They give discounts if you pay early. There's monthly interest. So there's lots of options. And what we do is we kind of have to learn your process and see, how all your fees are structured and when things are applied, and then we set it up to, mirror that functionality.
That all makes perfect sense.
And kind of going back to your cannabis example, let's say we went live and had done all your licenses, and then, year, 2 years, you needed to add the cannabis licensing and all the fees and everything associated with that. You just put a support request in. We're going to do that for you. There's not going to be a charge for it. It's just all that is covered underneath your guys' subscription.
I like that.
Yeah, one example of that is Sacramento, who's been using CitizenServe since, I don't know, like 2000, for a very long time. Anyways, they recently passed a vacant lot ordinance, and what they're trying to do is get people to develop their vacant lots. So they pass an ordinance where, okay, if you've got a vacant, undeveloped lot, you have to pay an annual fee. And so we've set up this new license type. You have to go on and register your vacant lot, and you have to pay a fee, and if you don't pay, there's interest and penalty and admin penalties and fines and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, things change as things develop within a city, and new issues come up, and you need to add a new license type. We add new license types.
And it can even kind of be outside of that in terms of like, hey, we're interested in doing something X, Y, or Z. Could you guys help us with that? And we worked with the city of Massachusetts that they were doing health licensing with us, but they wanted to do a foodborne illness site, so someone could come in to their portal, say, hey, I got sick. I ate at McDonald's on Tuesday and I got sick. And then if they get, 5 of those, and they go out and they send an inspector to see what's going on. So that was a great example. They're like, hey, we got a problem. Is this something you guys could do? And we worked with them and put that, had CitizenServe and configured CitizenServe in the portal to do something like that. So we get a lot of those types of things too that are kind of outside of what you might even normally consider, a permit or a license. So we're always there to help you guys with things like that too, that, we'll either say, yeah, we can do that, or no, they really can't use CitizenServe for that.
It's another thing, I'm trying to think of things that my people, if they were all in the room, would be asking. Is there an easy way to waive, certain fees that have been applied by the system and let it still be tracked that those were assessed?
There is. It works in the same manner for both of them. So let me just grab this one.
Saying that is, our line staff would need to see if someone's requesting some grace on something, we would be able to quickly pull up the history and see, oh, well, here's instances where you...
How much grace they've already received.
Yeah, how much...
Right.
There's a limit to that.
So if it's an automatic fee, you can't take it off. The system is still going to add it there unless, I mean, there's ways to get around it, but if it's an exception, then what you do is you add a credit to the license. So I would come up here and hit the add fees, and I'll just enter a credit. Let's see. Here's a credit. Let's say I'm going to give them a $100 credit, and I'm going to do it because, you know, I like them. And I'll save it.
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
You always more, you know, like, it's easier to give people credit if they're nice. So that just puts in a negative amount so that you have a tracking. Okay, the fees were really this, but we applied a credit for this amount.
And Julie, with that, the credit here says for police jurisdiction, but we would be able to have a separate one that maybe said credit based off needs or something like that. We would be able to add an extra line that kind of just made it specific. So if we ran a report, we would be able to see somebody who's kind of gotten these grace periods over time.
Yeah, you could definitely have as many different types of, I'm just looking at some of theirs. We have lots of random fees in here, but yeah, you can, these are all customizable, so you can put whatever you want in there.
And then we would be able to run a report off that and pull up the information of anybody who's gotten those credits over the past 6 months or a year or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
But if that credit, then different departments are involved, and there's a credit of $100. Who's eating up that credit? How are we going to track that? If fire just giving $100 credit, how are we going to know that?
Usually it's through the GL code. So you have different codes tied to your fees. Let me see if these have codes. And so you would set up, so like here's their account codes. This is their account code for this. So what you would do is you'd have, you know, fire department credit, and maybe that's an 01322. And police credit, that's a 01322. Or whatever. So you either, if you have different GL or account codes for them, you plug those into the system and then you can report that way, or you could just put it in the description of the fee.
Okay.
And you can set up, different people can add these fees and some people can't. So you can say, okay, this person's allowed to add fees, this person, you know, they can't. They can just add payments or something like that.
See, what we have a lot with on the transient occupancy tax is they'll send it's manual at the moment, or they'll send something in and they're late, but they don't send it with the $50 minimum fee if it's zero, or the 10% fee
right.
if it's dollar value. We send out delinquencies, you know, we send our original TOT return, blank TOT returns out. If it doesn't come back, we send a delinquent one. If it comes back and it's a delinquent return, we then have to send a you owe us this $50 penalty type of thing. If the penalty for some reason gets waived, our current system, what we do is it goes into, in our system, they've been charged that $50, but it's just on the system side. We can then credit it, and it goes into a credit bucket. And then they can, if they owe $100 next month, they can pay us $50 and then use their credit, their outstanding credit, and that credit, so it's either waived, or if they overpaid or have an adjustment that they made a mistake, they can apply that credit the next month.
to the next one. So if they overpaid for some reason, they can apply that overpayment to a future
Yes.
report when received.
It goes into, you know, if we can correct the return. So right now, if the information says that, you know, gross receipts are this, this, and this, we can adjust the gross receipts to make them what they should be, and it files out to what the correct tax should be. And because they've already paid for something, the difference of what they did pay and what the corrected amount is a credit. And then we apply that credit to the future. It sits in a often la-la land, so to say, and
Gotcha.
we apply that later. And then we balance every night to what we've actually received, cash, check, and credit cards.
Gotcha. So if I paid this, it's 0, but then I said, oh, you know what, this was only 30,000. So now it's going to show that they have a balance, a negative balance due, so they have a credit. And when we look at all of the tax reports, when you look at the summary listing, you get a total down at the bottom that'll show, okay, they still have this credit available. So you would adjust this one and then apply that payment to the next report.
One other question I have is we have a big issue with security. This is like an IRS tax return, and our ordinance says nobody can review that, and we cannot share this data with anybody. So the information in reference to the transient occupancy tax should only be available for, you know, the individual if it's his own permit, but us in the finance department or whoever happens to be working that particular area. So it's not open and viewable to the public, and for transient occupancy tax, it's not really available for anybody else in the city either unless there's an actual need for something. And usually on TOT, that's not an issue. Nobody really needs to know unless it's community development and they're doing some kind of big new project type of thing. So
Gulf Shores has a similar situation. So if we look at, I'm just on the admin side of things, if I look at the license types, revenue is where they have, these are all inactive. We set these up and then we didn't use them there because this issue came up. So this is where they have their business license, and then they have a separate department or folder for their tax. And the reason we split this out is that the way the rights are assigned, it's based on these departments or folders. So this way we could give, let's say building had full view access to the licenses, but we didn't want them to see the taxes. By putting it in a separate folder, they can't view them. So if I go look at a building user, let's see if I can find somebody who has a good example. Here's a good example. So he can view revenue, which means he can see business licenses, but he can't see anything in taxes. So that's how you'd structure it, so that you have two separate departments. People in finance have access to both, but outside people just have access to the licensing side of things.
So Julie, is that set up by security classes, or is it literally on this screen here where it's like big security matrix and you just specify yes or no for everything?
It's based on roles, so we create roles. So like,
class-based.
Yeah, it's class-based. So if I say, okay, we want to change, you know, building no delete and give this a yes, I change the role here, and then it applies to all the users who are assigned to that role.
That matrix.
So it's kind of by department and by role.
That matrix ends just being kind of a handy visual to see what.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah, if I go back to the user and I try editing.
I think that's really good. I like that.
Yeah, the check boxes are gone. I'm just assigning roles to them. So I'm going to give him, you know, yeah.
To a decision maker or whoever.
Right.
Who's got what without getting into the weeds, so.
Yeah, it's easy to just, so you can just kind of look at them and go, oh, they can do this and that. And then if you need to drill down and go, what roles do they have? Here's the roles that they have. So he's got to assign to all, which means he can assign to all the departments except for records, doesn't take assignments. So these are the roles, and that's just, as you said, the visual depiction of those things.
I like that.
Most of our customers will say, hey, I need to set up Joe and set him up just like Mary.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And
And-
the person knows, oh, I know what that means. You know, I just need
Yeah.
it in the same security class, authorization.
I have two questions. One is, how does, we take Gulf Shore or whatever, how does this interface with their finance system?
Gulf Shores, do they do, I don't think that they have an integration with their finance system. So some of our clients will do an integration where the payments automatically get sent over and some don't. So because Gulf Shores doesn't do an integration, they run daily deposit reports, and then they enter the information, they send it over to finance, finance types it in to the financial system. So that's kind of the manual approach. We have other cities who do integrate with our financial system, and that can happen various different ways. The most common is it's like a nightly batch. So every night we send a file over, it gets imported into your financial system that contains all the payments with the types and the GL codes and all that information, and then it just gets imported into your financial system.
Which I believe is what we're looking to go to and doing the integration and everything like that.
Right, and we can do, and as part of that, there's going to be reconciliation reports that you may want it by department or by person. I mean, you know, in terms of people manage their own drawers, we've done reconciliation reports all kinds of different ways. And then, as Julie said, we'll do the reconciliation report. You'll look, you know, you'll compare that to the drawer. We'll create the file that goes to accounting. You'll give all three of those to accounting. They'll look at the reconciliation reports, you know, the receipts and the file, and they'll upload that in their GL.
How does Sacramento do theirs?
Sacramento is, we're just redoing it for different departments now. They were doing it just for the rental housing inspection, and it was just a one-way push. Like, we would push the invoices over to finance, and finance would collect them in their financial system, which is ECAPS. And we're changing it now so that we're going to be sending over the payments, and then they're going to, or the invoices, and then finance is going to send us back the payment. So we haven't done that yet. We're just starting that. So we've previously just been sending over the invoices, and then they collect the payments through finance. They don't take online payments. So the payments go directly to finance, and then finance sends us back the payment amount.
Right, and we have others that do that kind of what I call centralized cashiering like that, where they don't, you know, they don't take like building permits or license payments over the counter. They have to go to a centralized cashier. And there's several different ways we've done that. We've done it through web service, where that system will query us for either a property number or a person or a combination, and we'll say, here's what's owed. Give that back to the system via web service. The payment will be made, and then I'll send us back via web service what was paid. So we've done it several different ways. Kind of depends on what, you know, the thing that works best for you guys in your existing systems.
My other question was for Gulf Shores as an example, since they're the only ones that are doing transient occupancy checks. What is the process? We here in Palm Springs, we have monthly returns that we send out, and they submit them, and they have a due date when they're required back to us. What is the process for Gulf Shores? Do they send out emails? Do they say the form's available? How do you get the form or the notice out to the people? What is the flow?
They don't send an invoice every month with the report. They just say, here's the forms. You have to submit these monthly or quarterly or annually based on the business and how it's set up. So then the business is really driving it, and then what they do is they check it on the background, kind of a trust but verify. So they trust that you're going to send in your report, but then they have reports that say, send us a list of everyone who didn't send in the report, and then they mail them an invoice and say, now you're late, here's your form. So that way they didn't have to do as many mailings up front. Most people, you know, they get in their schedule, they're sending it in anyways. Why send out the mailing up front? You know, save a stamp, save some time, and only mail it after the fact if they didn't mail it in.
And then your system allows it, if the system is open and for the individual to come in, do they have a password? How do they get access to their system, their particular person, their entry?
they're going to register. So when they first go online, they have to register to be able to do anything. And when they try to register, if they plug in an email address that we already have, then it's going to connect them to their existing accounts. If you don't have email addresses, so let's say we import all of your tax files and your licenses and we don't have good email addresses, then what we do is we assign a temporary username, and then we send them a letter that says, here's your temporary username, go online, plug this in, put in your verifying information, and then you can get connected. So it'll connect them to their license that way.
And then they change their password.
Right. And so some people just wait until the renewal process happens. They say, okay, when we send out renewals, then we're going to send this information about the portal and how they can register and all this. And if they don't want to wait till renewal, they just send out a letter whenever you're ready, or an email if you have email addresses. It works best if you have email addresses. It's just one less step for the applicant. But if you don't have them, you don't have them.
And so, for Gulf Shores, just to reiterate, they don't do a push ding as a reminder or anything. Those people that know they have returns, they're just available, and then they basically just send out delinquency notices.
Yeah, so they'll come in here every month and they'll say, all right, I'm on the test database, so the data is kind of old. So they would normally, if it's today, they'd say, show everyone who was late for June 1st. And then they run it, and the system goes, it's still spinning. It goes and it finds everyone who's late and just basically sends them an invoice. So there might be a lot since I'm in test and sold data, but let's see. So it's just a basic invoice. You failed to file the following tax returns for your sales monthly and your consumer tax. So it just pulls in everyone and what they're missing. So some people have multiple taxes, like that first one. Here, this guy's got lodging, consumer, and sales tax, and he didn't send any of them in for that month.
But we also have an IVR system that is text capable. So like as an example, if you wanted to send out if you had a cell phone, a valid cell phone you wanted to send, or if they opted in to text messaging, we could set it up so you could send them a text message that's coming due or anything like that, basically.
You could set up a similar process. So if you want to notify them in advance, you have basically same process, different letter and different criteria, right? You're finding everyone who should be due next month, and so you're sending an advance letter. So you could do both if you wanted to.